Okay, so welcome to the second lecture for Conversation 2. Last week I did a lecture for all three conversation classes together, but this week they will all be separate, so make sure this is the correct class for you. This is Conversation 2, and today I want to bring you up to speed on the things that are going on in terms of this semester. So first of all, the cyber lecture classes have been extended one more week because the public schools were also suspended until April 6th. So we now have 5 weeks of class missing, which means that the first class we were supposed to have on March 2nd, the designated makeup day was on Saturday, which was yesterday. So March 2nd was supposed to be made up on March 21st. But of course we are still in limbo doing this video lecture thing. So this week, be aware that this is the first lecture, week number 2. And because of the Saturday makeup class, I'm going to do a second video lecture and another topic later this week. So you have to log in to the website, the CNU portal, twice this week. Okay? So this is week number 2, and week number 3 is going to follow this lecture later in the week. So unfortunately you have to do 2 assignments this week. Thank you to everyone who has submitted their assignment already. It's due tomorrow. If you haven't handed it in already, you have to hand it in tomorrow. If you are late, then the 3% penalty per day applies. But just so you know, it's a homework assignment, so it's supposed to be done on time. And if you do it on time and it's done and it's complete, then you get full credit. I'm not going to grade each of these assignments individually. When I grade assignments, I'll let you know. But this is just regular homework, so it's basically practice for the midterm. Now, I'm not really sure what's going to happen. I hope that the midterm will be an interview in my office individually, but the way things are right now, there's a distinct possibility that we will not be in the classroom 2 months from now, in which case the midterm is going to have to be adjusted. We'll deal with that when it comes around. I heard that American universities are deciding to do their entire semester online, which might be what happens to us too. As a result, the class is going to be difficult to grade accurately and fairly, so MIT, I read an article today, and MIT has decided just to give students a pass or fail and not grade them according to a curve or by letter grades or percentages, because it's not fair. I'm not sure what policy Chungnam is going to implement this semester, so we will see what happens. But for now, it's the same kind of idea. You do the homework, you do it properly, you hand it in on time, and you pass. And it's complete. That's it. And if you don't do it, then you get 0. Okay? So make sure you hand it in on time, because I don't want to be checking homework a week later to see who's submitted and who's not. So tomorrow is the deadline, and this week you need to do 2 more. What else can I say? I know the quality of the first lecture was not very good. I tried to do it in the classroom to make it seem like you were actually there. Because I'm using my phone attached to a selfie stick, it's not good to be too far away from the microphone. I have a professional microphone, but I do not have a good webcam, so I haven't been able to record high definition videos. I'm just using my phone. We're all trying to adapt to what's going on this semester, so we'll try and improve the quality every week as we go. I heard a rumor that the English department is perhaps going to supply us with better quality webcams because we have to do this for an extended period. So if that happens, then I'm going to use the webcam. But until then, this is my home office, and this is my library, and this is how I'm going to do things. I think the quality of audio is more important. You need to hear me. What you see is less important. So this is conversation class. So I'm going to just focus on how to speak and the content of the class. So listen carefully to what I say, and don't worry too much about the background or whether the resolution is good or not until we fix that. Also, I need a whiteboard, but I don't have that yet. I'm also going to make sure I have that for future video lectures. So this is week number 2. The topic is from chapter 1 of the textbook. This is the textbook. I already showed it to you. So we're doing Takeaway English 3. Chapter 1 is about world languages, which is a great topic, I think, to start with, because this is the Conversation 2 class for the Asia Business department. So lots of you are from different countries. I know that just from looking at your names in the roster. So the main discussion here is about recognizing the sounds from different languages. To go along with that, we also have, of course, cultural differences too. So, you know, the traditional differences between, I'm from Canada, as I told you before, the traditional differences between North American behavior and East Asian behavior is, you know, Koreans and Japanese people tend to do a bow when they greet people, and Canadians or Americans tend to shake hands. Now, since we have the coronavirus going on, I'm going to have to say the bow is much preferable. Keep your distance from somebody and bow. I've learned how to do that. Sometimes in Canada we do the head nod as well. Just nod, acknowledge somebody. Whatever you do, don't touch anybody. That's what we have to deal with right now. So no handshaking. I've grown up shaking people's hands, and basically now that's not a thing. People are doing weird things on the internet, like elbow bumps and shaking hands with their feet and stuff like that, or shaking feet with their feet. But anyway, it's interesting to see how the sounds of words, the way people say them, and the context that they say them, sends a different message to different people. But that's not really what we need to focus on. Parts of this textbook, I want you to read through it, and I want you to get the most value. All of you have bought the textbook, hopefully. So I don't want to skip over sections, but when it comes to learning languages, you know, there's certain levels of language, basically skill levels, and you can use certain words to describe what those levels are. You can say level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, but of course, usually that doesn't really translate very well from one language to another or one test to another. And so if you're level 3, is that good, or is that low level? Are there 10 levels, or are there, if there's only 3 levels, then level 3 is advanced, but if there's 10 levels, then you're really a beginner or getting towards intermediate. So descriptive words obviously can be more effective. Like saying I'm a native speaker means I can speak the language well, or I can't speak any language well, essentially. I've always thought it's kind of a strange term to say native speaker, just because in Canada, you know, the multiculturalism and multilingual sort of society. If I was from Switzerland, it would be even more strange, I think, or rather stranger, to hear somebody say, oh, I'm a native speaker in German, and I'm also a native speaker in French, and I'm also a native speaker in English, but I'm Swiss. It doesn't really work out as well. In Korea, they like to use that term. It just means the official language in your country, or the language that's people have in common, is English. But in any country that's multilingual, then saying you're a native speaker, can you be a native speaker in multiple languages? There's several million of them in Canada, at least. I knew some of my friends, when I went to school in Quebec, could switch effortlessly back from French and English, and they're true bilingual speakers. They were native speakers in both languages. Some of them had a parent who was French and another parent who was English. So what do? You say, okay, native language, that means the language you grew up with. If you grew up with two languages, you're a native speaker in two languages, I guess. If you say fluent, that's a little bit, I think, a better word, because some people grow up and they don't have the environment, but they acquire the language and they become essentially a native speaker without being a native. That would be saying somebody's fluent. You can say I have basic, which my Korean language I think qualifies as basic Korean. My second language is French, and I would say I used to be fluent, but now I'm sort of maybe advanced, maybe more intermediate. I did teach French, but broken language, if you have the ability to speak in a broken way, that means that you're missing words, essentially, and the grammar is not correct. Maybe you're using your grammar from another language or something like that. So there's a variety of terms. They're all in the textbook. You need to be able to describe how well you can speak a language by using these words. They're all very useful, whether it's native speaker, fluent, broken, using slang, which is, I love slang personally, but since we're doing video lectures, I'm probably not going to use a whole lot of slang, because it's better to explain it and put it into context in the classroom than it is to just throw it at you in a sort of in one direction, so that you just have to kind of figure it out on your own. Slang's a little bit hard to understand if your first language, or you're not able to come up with the cultural cues that you need to understand it. So we're not going to talk about slang. Normally I do in conversation class, because you use it when you speak. But the main, I think, since we're doing the video lecture, we have to focus on, one direction sort of speaking more than we normally would, even more so. And I do usually grade people on presentations and interviews and oral speaking skills in one direction. But in class, we normally spend a lot of time going back and forth, because that's the natural way that human beings speak. And you may need those skills in meetings, or when you're trying to understand a client, or you're trying to get information, or you're contacting somebody. But the way things are right now, probably the only way that I can grade you effectively, if I'm asked to do that, is for you to do the same thing I'm doing right now, which is record yourself speaking, or I'm going to call you on Skype or something, and I'm going to interview you. I'm going to interview you over the video, the webcam that I get, and that will be your interview. It'll be sort of a one-on-one situation, the same as it would be in the office, except for you have to call me through your phone, or you have to call me from your laptop or something like that. We'll see how it goes. I'm not sure. So anyway, the most important thing about this chapter is the really flexible words that you would use to describe how well you speak. So yes, there's these adjectives that I just described, like native, fluent, broken, and so on, basic. And then on page number 4, you can see that they're discussing these words, adverbs, like to describe how well you speak in terms of the speed or the clarity or something like that. How easy it is to understand, that kind of stuff. So they have these words: easily, fluently, quickly, naturally, normally, or clearly. And those words can be used to describe your proficiency with language, but they can also be used for anything else, like how well you build things out of Lego, or how well you drive a car, or how well you play soccer. It can be applied to anything. So these words are very useful, and I want you to pay attention to them. But as we did last week, you did the introduction assignment. The main focus of what I want you to do this week is based on the topic, because normally each homework assignment is basically preparation for the midterm interview. And we'll continue to do that until we figure out that there's no midterm or something like that. But in my experience, the best thing to do for the first month of class, the first 4 or 5 or 6 weeks in conversation class, is to get students to listen and talk about the topics, which we can't do in class, which is unfortunate, but at least you're listening to me and you have a chance to think about this. Write down a paragraph based on the topic, and try and write it in the same way that you would speak. Don't write an academic paragraph. Try and write it in the same way that, and a lot of you did, which is great. Your introduction was formal at the beginning, and then started to become casual and sounded like you were actually talking to me. And I want you to sort of imitate the way that you would speak when you write these assignments to me. So please do the same thing, a half a page. Some people are just writing in the email. I need you to send me a document so I can see the word count and I can see that you've done half a page. So don't just type in the email. Please send me a document file from Microsoft Word, and send it to me through email, same way. I want you to choose a language that you think is interesting. One, you can decide what you want to say about it. The main question I was going to ask you is, what language or languages are you interested in, and why? That's the question. And you answer this question, you send it as an assignment, and on the midterm, this will be one of the questions that I ask you in person, or perhaps through Skype or something like that, through a video call if that's what we have to do. And I want you to, choose a language first, talk about the language, and then explain your interest in it. It doesn't matter what the reason is. You just have to give me a reason. And you have to be descriptive, and you have to use good words, and the grammar counts, right? The vocabulary and the grammar, this is how you're going to be evaluated, is can you express yourself in English about a given topic. So, the world language topic, I'll give you an example. My first language is English, obviously. I moved to Quebec when I was young, so I've always been interested in French, but French kind of became less attractive to me because I was forced to study it in elementary school, and everybody spoke French well except for me, so I kind of had to catch up. I do love French, but I've always kind of been interested in German, and I think part of the reason is because Germany has a very what can we say? The history, the military history and their reputation in the past is very mixed. They have all these great individuals, Beethoven to Kant, Immanuel Kant, and great philosophers and chemists and scientists and musicians and high culture. There's lots to admire about German culture. And then they have the military Prussian heritage and the Nazis in World War II. Going back to Martin Luther, there's all these kind of great German people throughout the entire history, and some terrible German people as well. But when it comes to just the impression that you get of German, lots of people make jokes about the way it sounds because it just sounds kind of harsh. English is not the most fluid, romantic language. That's why it's not a Romance language, and neither is German. Romance language is French or Italian or Spanish. They have a flow to them, and they have softer sounds, easier, more poetic, etc., etc. But I like German. Whether you want to say something nice or something rude, it just has a really funny sort of harsh impression to it, and it's very easy to, even when you're trying to be nice and say things softly, to make it sound like you really mean it and you're really serious. Gutentag is not a scary sounding word. That just means hello in German. But it is much harsher than saying salut or bonjour. Those just have a little bit of a different impression to them. So you can tie it to history, you can tie it to geography, you can tie it to your interest in the culture, or you can decide whatever it is, just something. Some people like Russian, some people want to speak Portuguese, some people want to learn, Nigerian or a language from, I don't even know, Somalian. Everybody has their own reason. Maybe it's because they've never heard anything that sounds like that. It sounds unique. Or maybe it's because there's a practical reason and you want to study in Germany, and that's why you need to learn about German. So, or any of the 100 languages that are in India. So, just describe. Please choose a language. Describe your interest in the language. Talk about it a little bit, and then tell me why you're interested in that particular language. I've always been interested in Japanese also, and Koreans don't like to hear that kind of stuff, but there's this very simple reason that I wanted to understand Japanese, and that's because I like the cartoons. That's it. I like the comic books. I wanted to know what they're saying in those cartoons. That's it. I'm a big fan of Japanese cartoons, anime. I want to improve my Korean because I live in Korea and my family's Korean, and most of my students are Korean. So there's a practical reason for me to learn Korean. But Japanese is just interest in the comics and the animation, and German history is just interesting to me, and the sound of German language is distinct. So that's all you have to do. This will help you if you go to page 6. It talks about the origins of writing, and it tells you a little bit about Chinese characters and Greek characters. And this class is not about writing, but when you text and when you have conversation and when you use short forms of words and slangs and stuff, it's really an evolution of the language. It's another step, Human beings made sounds, we spoke to each other and listened to each other, and then writing evolved out of that, and then texting evolved out of writing, and real-time writing is in some ways more like conversation than you think. So maybe we can take advantage of that in this class too, that perhaps at some point we can figure out a way that we can have a chat room or something, and we can text each other, which will simulate having conversation better. We'll see what we can do. Please be patient and understanding. I hope this video is better quality than the last one. You can hear me better. And thank you for doing your assignments. Try to keep up. If you have any questions, you can direct them towards me by email, as you have been already. And we'll stay in touch, and be safe. Don't touch your face. Don't touch other people. When you go outside, wear a mask if you can, and keep away from other people for a couple weeks. And I think the government and Korea is looking for a reboot here, just to reduce the cases to a trickle, so that hopefully we can get back to our normal routine somewhat, still being careful. That's what we're all looking for. So thank you, everyone, and there'll be a second lecture coming later this week, so please log in and listen to this, and then you can expect another one that you need to listen to later in the week. Thank you very much.